So honestly, I've been seeing a lot of xenophobia, Islamophobia happening on the internet recently, as you all know. And the thing is, most of it's like started by weeaboos or weebs in short, and not the actual Japanese population. Now, obviously, there's always like a small handful of you know, Japanese people that are actually like that. But more often than not, you realize that the ones that are making the most noise are actually the weeaboos themselves. Now, when you tell said weeaboos to define Japanese culture, more often than not, they usually just default to shrine, temple, and more often than not, they are not even able to define what is Japanese culture properly. Like, they don't know how to distinguish between tradition/culture and religion. So I do understand that ethno-religious demographic groups exist, like for example Jews, but the thing is, not all ethnic Jewish people follow Judaism as a religion. And in the same way, some people tend to... So basically, a lot of these weebs, they have this false perception that honestly really needs to be rectified before it's too late, that if you're Japanese, you're automatically Shinto, and there's no two ways about it. And coming from the weeaboos, this is exactly the kind of toxic mindset that will divide people and not bring people together. The more they try to stir this kind of discourse over differences in culture and religion in general. Train liveries change every single time, but they are still under the same company. Culture changes over time, but it is still considered Japanese culture. That's the point that I'm trying to prove. So that being said, if these people, they on the internet, they don't live in Japan, who are they to decide what is considered Japanese culture and what isn't? Because again, most of the time they cannot even tell the difference between what is culture and what is religion. When you talk about culture, I'm expecting them to bring up stuff about Japanese customs, secular customs, traditions, the way they behave in real life or online, and the way they show respect to people. On the culture side of things, you might even talk about just in general, kimono or secular festivals, holidays. Even those that are secular right now but they have religious roots, even those are counted as well. Or even right now, me trying my best not to accidentally capture people's faces on camera. That's why you see me, doing all these with my phone camera. That's all part of Japanese culture and lifestyle as well. Trying not to make a scene or disturb other people for no reason. A lot of these weeaboos per se, they are openly against organized religion, and they have a tendency to dislike the Abrahamic faiths. Okay, here's the thing, I'm Catholic. I'm part of an Abrahamic faith as well, and I have a lot of Muslim friends as well from Southeast Asia, etc. So even though I disagree with them and whatever these weeaboos personally believe in, I understand where their dislike for organized religion comes from in general. But people tend to forget that organized religion isn't just, Christianity or Islam in general. It could be Eastern Asian religions as well. Even in India, that happens. They also have the caste system and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna go into that in detail. Which then brings me to my next point. Why are they openly talking about religion when they're atheists in the first place? I find it really hypocritical that they keep bashing Abrahamic religions, but at the same time, they're like, oh, I'm atheist, but I think, the Eastern religions are better than like the Abrahamic religions. And then when you tell them, hey, if you like them so much, why not? You want to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. Why not you convert then? And then they're like, no, it doesn't align with my beliefs of atheism. That's usually their their excuse. And even if these individuals or groups happen to be agnostic or free thinker, it still doesn't give them it still doesn't give people the moral authority to police people based on their beliefs. Because a lot of times these weeaboos make statements such as Abrahamic religions are bad because A or B or C, whatever. But when an ethnic Japanese person, like born and raised in Japan, let's say they convert to Christianity or they revert to Islam, and then people would just go all out and bash them, saying that, oh, they are traitors, they're not Japanese anymore, and saying stuff like, stick to your religion, that kind of thing. So why are atheists, or anybody for that matter, they are the exact same people that promote, this whole freedom of religion thingy, yet they are literally telling ethnic Japanese people to, quote unquote, stick to their religion without knowing if said individual was even religious in the first place before they changed religions, per se. Aside from the fact that many weeaboos don't know how to, differentiate between what is considered culture and what is considered tradition. I know sometimes it's a little difficult, but when these people don't define properly, they aren't even able to define what exactly comprises Japanese culture, or whether like modern day Japanese people, they accept it, they reject it, or they only adopt like half of it, that kind of thing. As I say, culture is always changing, and it is not upon you to decide what would be considered culture or tradition for people living in a place that you don't live in. The holy books, Bible, Torah, Quran, you're not supposed to take them at face value. You're supposed to read the entire thing, look at the front, look at the back, and if you don't understand the context of these verses, you're supposed to clarify with these religious scholars in general. It's just like how, people in the Bible, they lived up to like 900 years old, but they don't actually mean 900 years old. The reason why it's written as it is because in the past, they had no concept of what time is, like modern day time is. So they just like quantified based on whatever they had. So in reality, they're not 900 years old. They're probably like 90 or 100 or something like that. And you also have to understand that, especially in the Abrahamic faiths, whatever happened in the past does not necessarily translate to what is right or wrong nowadays. It's more of like you think of it as a historical recount of how people lived their lives in the past and what was the situation like back then. It's funny how people keep bringing up, like Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 or something like that, but they fail to realize that even in the Bible, literally there's like Rebecca, whom is 3 years old, and that is somehow okay. I just don't get it. Whilst in general, as a Catholic, I honestly hope that like these books, they could provide a little bit more clarity, especially since people just take things at face value. I mean, just like the religious books in general, you just hope that there will be a little bit more clarity, right? Like the whole, beating wives thing has been taken out of context, and the 4 wives thingy, it's more of like you usually only have one, but if for whatever reason you need to take in more than one because they need your protection, and you have the means to take in more than one, and then you're able to satisfy each wife equally, and be fair to each and every one of them, then it is permissible. But again, this is more of like a thing in the past, and nowadays, even though technically under Islamic law is still allowed, typically people don't practice this. My Muslim friends from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, whom I've interacted with a lot online, they don't even practice all these sorts of things. So the main thing is, it is a historical recount of like how people's lives were in the past. You're not supposed to take it word for word or like face value without understanding the context of things. I mean, just wait till these people find out that the air we breathe in and the water we drink, unless it's like contaminated, it's halal. Literally. Now, even my Muslim friends in Southeast Asia, they have acknowledged that the governments or the rulers in the Middle East are quite corrupt. Greed has taken over them. They're not practicing their faith like how it's supposed to be practiced. Greed or poverty drives people to do stupid things, not religions. Let me make that clear. Then you might be asking, why are there so many, foreigners here? Think about what is happening in their quote-unquote home countries, like where they're born in. Why are there so many Burmese people in Japan right now? Think about what is happening back in Myanmar. The terrible situation right now. They still need to live, they still need to feed themselves, and they need to try their best at doing so. That's why they're here. Not because they want to come in and, dilute Japanese culture, that kind of thing. And this is my own opinion, by the way, with my own opinion regarding immigration in general, I believe that no matter how hard it is, people should try their best they can still keep what's dear to them, but they should try their best to assimilate to the host country that they're in. I know it's difficult, but at least people have to try. But that being said, again, I understand that some people might have more difficulties assimilating, adjusting, and stuff like that. And therefore, you should be mindful about who exactly are you taking in and how well do you think they would be able to cope, manage their own lives here. But that is absolutely no excuse for whatever kind of phobia or racism that is happening right now. The thing is, before you want to tell other people to follow the kind of culture that you want them to follow, you need to be able to define said culture properly. And again, going back to my main point, you need to be able to tell the difference between what is culture and what is religion. Ethnic Japanese Christians exist. Today they make up about 1.5% of the population, and in a few years' time, not in a few years' time, maybe decades, it is expected to grow to about 2%. Ethnic Japanese Muslims also exist. Now in Japan, typically 90% of them, the Muslims here, are of foreign descent, whereas 10% are ethnic Japanese. But they exist. Japanese imams exist. There's, what's his name? Ahmad Maeno. He is the imam for the mosque in Akihabara. And he knows his stuff well. Just because Japanese people are Christian or Muslim, ethnic Japanese people, that doesn't make them any less Japanese. They keep their culture whilst they are freely able to practice their own religion. Again, you guys need to be able to differentiate between what is culture and what is religion. The economy is not really in a good state right now. A lot of Japanese people also don't have passports, so they don't travel as much. But traveling abroad would really broaden your mind. And that's the reason why Japanese people who travel abroad, they might speak a little bit more English than those who don't, and they are also exposed to, different cultures, different traditions, and different religions, like all over the world as well. Because even for Malaysia, right, even though their government can be sometimes, but people there, regardless of their race or regardless of their religion, they are friendly, they're nice, and they're able to live together with one another harmoniously. Religions are not evil. People become evil. That's the difference. Greed and poverty destroys people. And before you tell people to, assimilate, you need to define what they have to assimilate to properly and be able to distinguish between, tradition, culture, religion, that sort of thing. To weebs, Japanese culture is more or less just whatever they think Japanese culture is, shrine, temple, and stuff like that. But Japan alone is actually a lot more diverse than you would think. There are also indigenous people, Ainu people, Ryukyuan as well. And I hope these people haven't forgotten them. And when you have freedom of religion, you really have to make it freedom of religion, as long as they're not really supporting any groups like, the one that starts with A and ends with N and Shinri something. I'm not going to say it all out, but you know what it means. And even within Japan, there are all these smaller religions, like the newer ones like Tenrikyo, Reihano, and stuff like that. But how many people even know that? And with regards to like the Ichikawa government not providing burial grounds for Muslims, that's more of like due to a space constraint issue like lack of space, as opposed to actually being against a certain religion or being against like a certain race, even though it's not really race in this context, it's just religion in this context. Because when you tell weebs exactly how old the Miracle Mosque in Kobe is, or how old Tokyo Jami in Yoyogi Uehara is, just sit back and watch the weebs just melt down. Japanese people are not as uneducated as you might think. Now, maybe some people might be ignorant, but to say that they are uneducated as a whole is flat out wrong. Like, even my friends in class, they're actually surprisingly good at geography. Like, basically just naming countries, like just knowing that said country exists. They might not know about like the exact culture, but hey, at least they know that said place exists. It just so happens that those who have traveled abroad tend to be more, open-minded, and tend to have a better understanding of like, the world in general. This whole hate on foreigners or like a specific demographic group really has to stop. Especially if people are trying their best to assimilate. If not, we should focus on more efforts to assimilate them rather than, carrying on with this nonsense, like the racism, the xenophobia nonsense, So yeah, bye.